This is an overview of Unit Part 1, Thinking Like a Teacher. So the purpose of this section is to highlight your thinking process as you are considering all that you know about your learners to develop your sequential unit of instruction. These will be our look-fors as we review the components that you include with your implementation materials. Please feel free to share artifacts that illustrate or support your responses to all of the prompts below. We are eager to get a glimpse into your thinking as a teacher. So the first heading is, who are your learners? So consider part 1 of your backwards design, otherwise known as your pre-plan, where you identified who your learners are for this unit of instruction. So indicator A is asking for you to describe your learners in a way that gives us insight into who you are teaching. You can include information about their school, community, age, grade level, culture, interests, disability, strengths, needs, range of abilities, etc. We want to hear your voice. We have a table below that has all of those pieces in there, and then there is room for you to put a description. The table will expand as you type, so feel free to include as much information as you want to or you possibly can. Going to look at indicator B, how did your knowledge, considering the table above, of your learners inform your planning as it relates to their grade level, level of cognition, cultural backgrounds, prior learning and curricular experiences, and instructional or assistive technologies? So all of the indicators in this first section of who are your learners are really going to tie back to your pre-plan in that first section when you were talking to us about the demographic information, when you were talking to us about the specific needs of your learners and how you are going to be taking those needs into account when it comes to your planning and informing your planning. In terms of indicator C, that's talking about IEP considerations. So telling me what accommodations and modifications you will make to ensure that all learners would have access to learning. So in thinking of what you put down on your pre-plan, you want to be thinking of just the accommodations and modifications that you are specifically making for this unit. You do not need to list all of the accommodations for your learners if they don't pertain specifically to what you are doing in your unit. The next heading in part 1 is planning for the learning environment. So tell me, how will you encourage an inviting, motivating, and productive atmosphere in your classroom? You want to make sure that you're hitting on all 3 of these pieces. You already started to speak to this in your pre-plan, so just think of the ways that you are creating an inviting atmosphere, but also how are you ensuring that your students are motivated and that they are being productive? Is it a way that you maybe organize your materials or organizing your physical space? Tell me all of the pieces that go into helping you to encourage this atmosphere in your classroom. For indicator B, it's asking for what procedures you are employing to respond to student questions and concerns, and what strategies are you utilizing for off-topic or off-task behaviors. So when you are in the moment of teaching and a student has a question or a concern, are there any sort of procedures that you employ? For instance, do you maybe not take any questions until the we do part? If you have students who are showing off-topic or off-task behaviors, how do you get them back onto the topic or the task at hand? Are there any strategies that you employ? And then indicator C is asking about active engagement strategies. So what did you include in your unit to make sure that you were gaining the interest of your learners? The next section is talking about differentiation, and there are 2 indicators in this section. Indicator A is asking how you're going to differentiate your lessons to make sure that they're including your student interests, as well as providing a level of challenge, but while supporting your learners with varying strengths and needs. Many of you, I'm sure, are doing things in your classrooms where you are differentiating for your learners. Maybe a certain learner needs a certain amount of processing time. Another learner may need to have a scribe. Another learner may need less problems on their math worksheet. Some people may need guided notes. How are you differentiating between your learners so that you are playing into their strengths, but also helping them with their needs while bringing in interests, but also providing challenge to them? And then indicator B is asking if, to discuss any other ways that you will differentiate instruction that are including but not limited to any cultural and linguistic considerations, instructional materials, instructional groupings. How are you differentiating when it comes to those pieces and any other pieces that you differentiate for? The next section is alignment, and this should look very similar. This should look familiar to you. This is somewhat similar to the table that was in your pre-plan, just missing a few columns. So wanting you to provide an overview of your instructional unit by completing the alignment chart with your intended learning goal, your relevant standards, and your lesson objectives. Also then wanting you to list plan supports that you included in your lessons that I can look for in your instructional plans. If you have more than 5 lessons, please just go ahead and add additional rows to include the lessons that you taught up to lesson 8. The last piece of part 1 are assessment considerations. So as you designed daily assessments across your unit, what considerations did you make to ensure that your learners could communicate their understanding to you? So what did you do when you were thinking about your pre-assessment, your post-assessment, your formative assessments, your OTRs? What were you thinking of, and what did you put into place so that you were assuring that your learners were going to be able to communicate their understanding of the topic at hand to you? This has been an overview of part 1 of the unit instructional plan. Thank you for taking the time to listen.